In this lesson, we're going to examine a successful approach to identifying the main features in a Task 1 writing question. As you may already know, writing Task 1 involves reporting on a graph, chart, or diagram that contains lots and lots of information that could be included in your answer. However, knowing what to write about is key to scoring high in task achievement. IELTS do not want you to describe every single detail in the visual representation. That's very important. They make this very clear in the question. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So, if you haven't spotted it, you are required to only write about the main features. Your examiner will actually award you a lower score if you ignore this advice and add less important or minor details. So extra care needs to be taken before you begin to answer your question, because it can be tricky to spot these main features on the day of the exam when you're under pressure. So that's why you need to practice beforehand. Sure, it can be tempting to just write about the first thing that you see. However, you won't be answering the question if you do not include these main features. Unlike in writing Task 2, where everyone will have different perspectives to write about, Task 1 contains factual information. Therefore, the examiner is looking at the exact same graph, chart, or diagram as you, and he or she will need to see the same 2 or 3 main features mentioned in every candidate's response. You need to learn how to spot them before you put pen to paper. To understand the concept of identifying a main feature, take a look at this picture. Describe the 2 main features that you see from this picture. I think you'll agree that there's lots to write about. Remember, we must choose 2 of the most significant ones. Would you describe the clothes they are wearing? Would you talk about the fact that the picture is in black and white? Perhaps you'd mention that there are exactly 250 people standing up, for example. Sure, all of these features are important in the photograph, but do they qualify as main features? If not, you shouldn't be including them. A closer look will reveal a more significant feature. Everybody is holding up their arms in front of them except for one person. Certainly, you will never get a photograph of any sort in an IELTS writing Task 1 question. The purpose of this exercise is to show you how important it is to choose the main features and how easily you can become distracted with all the other information that surrounds these main features. So now that we've that out of the way, let's take a look at what a real IELTS Task 1 writing question looks like, and let's see if we can answer it and identify the main features. Every Task 1 question will include a very brief introduction to the visual representation. Underneath the introduction, you will see the actual question. Now, you've seen this question already, but just to make clear that this does not change. So it's summarize the information below by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, having read the question, it's time to try and make sense of the graph, chart, or diagram, whichever one you get, in order to identify the main features. This should always be done before you begin your writing and your answer, and you should really be allowing 3 to 5 minutes to do so. Here's the sample question. I always encourage my students to answer the following questions to help them single out those main features. These questions can be used in almost all Task 1 questions. Okay, so the first question you should ask yourself is, what is the theme? Because there's no point looking at a lot of data and not understanding what it actually represents. With a deeper understanding of what's actually happening in the table, which is the case in this question, you're more likely to appreciate the main features, or at least identify them. So in this particular question, the table represents the life expectancy of both men and women born in 2014 across various parts of the world. So a lot of that has been taken from the introduction, but understanding it obviously is very different. The second question is very important when it comes to identifying the main features. What are the highest and lowest numbers? Now, you should be highlighting the highs and lows for both male and for both the male and female category in this question. So I have done that for you. That should be simple enough, but I recommend you do this on the actual exam paper itself. You won't be marked for it, or the examiner may not even see it, so it's absolutely fine to take notes on the actual exam paper. The third question is, has there been any substantial changes within a particular category? Now, we have many different categories in this table. We have male versus female, and then we have the 3, 6, we have 8 regions. So we can see that females obviously outlive males in all regions. So that would be probably the most significant change within a particular category. However, we can also see that the greatest difference or age gap occurs in Europe, where females outlive males by, I think it's 7 years. So that's the highest age gap. So we could again highlight that or make notes about it on the exam sheet, and then later when we get all this information, we can then narrow them down and identify what are the most significant ones. The fourth question: is there any obvious way to group categories together? Now, when we're grouping categories together, we should be grouping them by the same. Do they have the same value? Are they increasing at the same rate, or are they decreasing at the same rate? So there's a lot to think about here, and this is a question that might take a little bit more time. We've already discussed the most obvious one, and that is that women outlive men in every region. But a closer look will tell us another few, okay? So anything that you identify here, anything that you can group together to make a stronger main feature, you should be highlighting it, okay? The more information you can include in a single main feature, the better. Okay, so we can also see that Africa has the lowest life expectancy for both men and women. Okay, so notice I didn't just say for men, I grouped it together. So Africa is the lowest for both men and women. Then we have North America. They have the highest life expectancy for both men and women. So that's interesting. That's two pieces of information. And in fact, they could be grouped together because they both represent the highs and lows. Okay, so that could all be included in one main feature if you wanted. But again, we're just taking down notes for now, and at the end we can categorize them and we can identify what are the most significant ones. Females are expected to live until 81 in North America and Europe. So there's lots to write about. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to include everything. It's just a case of getting everything down on paper in note form. The fifth question and the final question is, are there any categories that stand out for breaking a common trend or pattern? So in other words, is there anything that breaks the pattern set by others? And to be honest, there isn't really anything because, as already discussed, females are expected to outlive us poor men in all regions, and there doesn't seem to be anything else that stands out as being different from the major trends in the table. So even though that question may not have helped us, it's still a good one to ask, because that would be something that would be significant, because it would stand out a lot more from the general trend. So there you are. They're the two main priorities and the two biggest features from that particular table. So I think you'll agree that those two main features give a good general overview of the table without including minor or inappropriate details. And on that note, it's not a good idea to offer your opinion or to try and explain why women outlive men, because that isn't explained in the table. Okay, so no matter how stuck you are for words, you're trying to make up your 150 words, do not give your opinion. You will be marked down for that. So you can see that we've had to scrap some features that we've identified earlier because they just simply weren't significant enough. For example, one of those features that we that came across was that females are expected to live to 81 in both North America and Europe. Okay, sure, they have the same life expectancy, but really it's not the bigger picture here. There is a more important feature, and we've included them. Similarly, we didn't include the greatest difference is in Europe. The greatest age gap was in Europe, where it was 7 years between men and women. Now, yes, it is quite a considerable age difference. However, some countries or some regions had a difference of 5 years or 6 years or 4 years. So it didn't stand out enough, and it's simply not that important in the whole context of the table itself. So now it's your turn. Instead of a table, I am going to give you a more complex bar chart. Next to the bar chart, you're going to be given the same 5 questions that we answered in the previous question. And with a scrap piece of paper, I want you to jot down notes and answer these 5 questions based on the bar chart I am going to give you. So if you want, you can pause the video and take your time and analyze the bar chart yourself in your own time. And when you press play, I can then give you the main features. So ideally, you should be looking for 2 or 3 main features from this bar chart. So here are the 3 key features that you should have identified. First one, science fiction and fantasy were the most popular genre for both boys and girls. So you notice that we grouped both boys and girls together in that main feature. We also made a comparison. The second one, horror and science fiction and fantasy were the most popular genres for boys. We didn't leave it at that. While romance was the least popular. So again, we've made a comparison. So again, we're trying to add more value to each main feature. Because remember, the question is asking us what are the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So be very careful not to include any information outside of what is represented on the chart. For example, you will be penalized if you said something like girls prefer romance because they are more scared of horror books. That's not necessarily true, or at least it's not represented on the graph. This is your opinion and it should be kept to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be marked down in task achievement. So let's take a look at the requirements for each band score in task achievement. In particular, I want you to notice how often the words main features actually appear in this criteria. So, if you have failed to explain the key features adequately, or you focus more on the detail without really giving the bigger picture, then you cannot score above a band 5. Then if you highlight all the key features accurately but the details are irrelevant or include inappropriate or inaccurate information, then you cannot score above a band 6. Moving up to band score 7, it states that you can clearly highlight key features. And then at band score 8, again, key features are clearly identified and highlighted and well illustrated. So there you are. That pretty much wraps up the lesson on identifying main features. Of course, there's a lot more to responding to a task 1 question in the writing test. But at least if you can identify those main features, you know what to write about, and after that it's up to your level of English. I want to stress it is really important that you spend time planning out your answer beforehand. A lot of candidates say that they do, but they generally don't, and it's definitely going to cost you marks. I strongly recommend that you take time out because it actually saves you time in the long run. So there you are. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. I'm going to leave you with some other common mistakes that I've come across as an IELTS specialist over the last few years, and hopefully you get some value from that too. So for now, take care and thanks for watching.